Calaroga Shark Media.
Hello, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news, a daily briefing on stand-up comedy, comedians, and the comedy industry, a sentence the algorithm loves. This is a big week. We're going to have Scrubs, Nate Bargatze's game show, that's out this week, and we know that's going to be great. A new special from Taylor Tomlinson, very exciting. Have you paid attention to this? You know, Barry Weiss, that's the woman that's running CBS News right now, and boy, is she doing a great job. A report from the Naughty But Nice Substack, which tends to be a little gossipy, says that Barry Weiss, who's running CBS News and doing a hell of a job, she's considering putting Joe Rogan on 60 Minutes. You know, you didn't mishear me. You're like, John, you misspoke there. No, I didn't. I'll say it again to be clear. Joe Rogan, 60 Minutes. A source says Barry respects disruptors. Joe built a global platform without legacy media that matters to her. A second source said they want oxygen in the room, not someone preaching to the choir. They're looking for reach. A source said Rogan's not going to do it. He makes more from podcasting than CBS could realistically offer. However, this wouldn't be about money. It would be about finally being accepted by the people who hate him. I don't think Joe cares at all. Jim Jefferies told a story about meeting Dave Chappelle backstage at a Netflix event. Jim explained Chappelle was playing the Hollywood Bowl 2 nights in a row, and I got the Dave wants to talk to you call. So I went off to a room, and I met Dave, and he's obviously smoking a cigarette and all that, and he goes, I was just chatting to Bill Burr, and he showed me the video of you being punched on stage. What was that like? I told him the whole story. We chatted for about 5 to 10 minutes. He's very friendly. He knew some of my stand-up. It was all very pleasant. Anyway, the next night, he gets rushed on stage by that guy with the fake knife. The next night, like 18 hours, he gets attacked on stage. The coincidence was insane. Interesting. Jefferies went on to say he prefers doing his own shows instead of festivals. To be honest, I like performing in front of my fans. My comedy's gotten to a stage now where I can start referencing old jokes of mine, or I can reference my parents, my brothers, or an ex-girlfriend or something, and people can sort of follow that. My shows are almost serialized now, you know? On this tour, there are 3 venues where 10,000 people will be coming. Jim sounds pretty grounded. He says, I'm not someone who needs to get up every day just to have the elation of the crowd and all that type of stuff, but I'm also hyper-conscious of that it won't last forever. I'm not going to be selling out big venues in Australia in my 80s. Hopefully, we could play this footage back when I'm selling these stadiums out in my 80s. My future is not always going to be like this. I put so much of myself into stand-up comedy, and so much of my identity of self-worth is whether an audience likes me or not. And I'm trying to be very zen about it these days. I'm trying to enjoy my family while they're young. If I'm at home in LA, the best night I can have is watching movies with my kids and having an edible. They say don't meet your heroes. We're going to have to get Mike Chisholm from the Letterman podcast on this program because I have photographic evidence that Mike Chisholm from the Letterman podcast met David Letterman. I haven't asked Mike about that. We text regularly, almost every day, but I haven't asked him about it because I just want to do that on mic rather than text. But last week at Just for Laughs Vancouver, Mike went to see David Letterman's show, and he sent me this audio.
Okay, I'm sitting here leaning up against the stage at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre in Vancouver. I'm watching everybody file out, all 2,800 people. It was a legit sellout. The place was absolutely jam-packed, and it was a phenomenal show. It started with Dave doing his own intro, and he did a couple bits about the Canadian curling fiasco that's going on, made some Trump comments. So he's doing the intro off stage, and then he brings himself on stage, and it was absolutely hilarious. It was so good, and does some Trump jokes, very funny. Then brings out Paul Shaffer, a Canadian flag drops, and we all sing O Canada. The Vancouver Canucks singer of O Canada came out, and they brought her out as well. And so we all sang O Canada together. Dave talked about how much he loved Canada. It was amazing. He then went and did a very funny rundown of his entire career, helped by Walter Kim, who came on the trip here. And so there was a big screen behind Dave, and they did hilarious bits about Dave growing up. And I don't even want to spoil it all, but anyway, he was growing up, and then it had really funny pictures attached to it, and then through his show business career as well. Absolutely spectacular. And then, of course, he brought Zach Galifianakis out, and it was so good. It was so good. They talked about the mechanics of comedy. They talked about Zach's career. They talked about where Zach is right now. They talked about the impact about technology on our world. Zach lives in an island near Vancouver Island, and so we discussed that. He's kind of become a bit of a I wouldn't say a recluse, but he talked about why he wanted to be away from city life. And they talked about show business and all sorts of stuff. It was absolutely hysterical. There were a couple Andy Kaufman type moments in the show where Zach just did a phenomenal job of taking the entire audience one way and then flipping it a little bit and then flipping it in a completely different direction that you had no idea it was going to go. He actually broke down in tears at one point, and it seemed like it was a really, really touching, Barbara Walters emotional moment. And then he realized it was a bit, and he even fooled Dave. It was fantastic. Dave recalled it many times throughout the show because he legitimately fooled him. It was a fantastic show. I'm so grateful. Met him before the show. Met fans of my show before the show, which was really weird. And it was absolutely spectacular. So if you have a chance to see Dave interview somebody as they take this thing on tour, they can't record them because that would violate the Netflix deal. I think that's my inkling anyway, but it was absolutely spectacular and highly recommend.
Again, thanks to Mike for covering Vancouver for us. Thanks to the JFL Vancouver folks for letting Mike cover Vancouver for us. SNL fans, a documentary is coming out. It is called Lorne. Want to guess who it's about? The logline tells us, while SNL is one of the most examined and celebrated shows in TV history, the man who built and sustained the institution for nearly 5 decades has largely remained out of view. We're told this is the first ever behind-the-scenes look into the life of Lorne Michaels and that the film reframes a cultural story audiences think they know, offering unprecedented access to the quiet force who shaped American comedy. Am I allowed to say out loud too soon? We just did a whole year of SNL too soon. You know who's on SNL? Is that Sarah Sherman. Well, she's going to be in a movie. It is called Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma. It is a slasher film. The premise is after years of slapdash sequels, the Camp Miasma franchise is handed over to an enthusiastic young director for resurrection. But when she visits the original star, a now reclusive actress shouted in mystery, the two women fall into a blood-soaked world of desire, fear, and delirium. Also in this thing, Heine Einbinder and Gillian Anderson. Vanyaland caught up with Rory Scovel. He was recently in Boston. He said, the tour's been great because you get the repetition of the shows and the shows themselves start to really mold and smooth out the edges of the actual show as you go. He compared this tour to the last and says, I'd say the difference between that show then and this hour now is that I've learned structurally how the show needs to go in these bigger spaces. So instead of just taking the jokes that I had, now I kind of prepare a show from the beginning, knowing that I'd be saying it in bigger spaces. And I decided, at least with this one, to be more personal and more honest about my deeper opinions about politics, religion, and family. Even though there are moments that are silly, there are also moments where I really try to take the opportunity to say something I really feel now that I have more people's attention. As for politics, he says, people exist on both sides of the aisle politically in our country, so it feels validating to know that I feel like I'm in the right space about it. And I think what feels good is I'm on stage telling people I'm not necessarily a good guy either. None of us really are in the way we'd like to believe, but we could all be better. If that gets a good response, that's great. I don't want to just be a comic who goes around and gets paid to tell jokes. I'd like to think maybe someone sees the show and it changes their perspective of something that is really important and something that really matters. I agree with Rory there. And, you hear me struggling with this show. I'm trying not to get too political, but we're going to be political in the second half today. Trying not to chase anyone away, but I'm also trying to use my time on the planet wisely. This is interesting. He said, I see a lot of my friends and I see their success, and it gives you that little seed of jealousy because you want that success as well, but also because of the jealousy, it plants the seed of motivation to work harder and figure out how to get there. I think I kind of needed to see my friends prove that we can succeed on a massive level in this business if we really apply ourselves, and I'm lucky. I do think I'm good at stand-up, and I think the only thing I needed to learn at 45 years old was how to apply myself. Brad Paisley and Kimberly Paisley will present the 4th annual Groceries with Dignity and Comedy Without, a fundraiser at Zany's Comedy Club, Nashville, April 19th. That happens to be during the Nashville Comedy Festival. It benefits The Store, a nonprofit org co-founded by the Paisleys that offers a free referral-based grocery store to empower families and individuals in need across Middle Tennessee. Past events have featured appearances by Nate Bargatze, Henry Cho, Kevin Nealon, Dusty Slay, and others. We'll see who shows up. Hulu is developing a comedy series about a washed-up reality star. Who could play a washed-up reality star? Chelsea Handler, that's who. The series follows Chelsea Handler's washed-up reality star with her live-in entourage of misfits as they scramble to rehab her image and reboot her career. When her estranged daughter unexpectedly moves in, the TV has-been is confronted with the one role she spent her entire life avoiding, motherhood. Did an AI write that? That sounds like the most generic thing ever. Who's this for again? You just told us, John. Hulu. Oh, that's right. The Hulu comedy brand, where you go when you're on the downside of the mountain. Did I say that out loud? Get back to me, publicists. All right, the rest of the show today is political. If you're not in the mood for that, come back at noon Eastern for Comedy Survivor. I haven't recorded it yet. I don't know who's in or out. And we'll have a normal episode tomorrow. Everybody else, enjoy these commercials, which pay my heating bills, and then we'll get political. The CBC had a discussion about that guy, Ben Bankus. You may recall Ben. He went viral for a, quote, joke about Renee Good. Renee, the woman who was driving the car and shot and killed by ICE in Minneapolis last month. As Bankus has been touring, some people have protested his shows. On the CBC, comedian Ali Hassan said Ben, and there are many other comedians like him, they believe they're speaking truth to power, and they believe at some level there's some type of George Carlin, Bill Hicks type of reincarnation. And this has been said by many people many times. Dude, George Carlin would hate you. George Carlin would absolutely despise you. Those are men who actually spoke truth to power. Power felt ashamed hearing the jokes that George Carlin made about them. He exposed people in power and talked about how they were corrupt. Ben's comedy is all punching down. This is easy pickings. It's low-hanging fruit. I don't consider it good comedy. There's no actual joke writing going into the bulk of it. He continued and said Ben's roots are racist from the beginning. His comedy was mediocre, and what he discovered during the pandemic was this impersonation of former chief public health officer of Canada. I've been doing this for 20 years. I follow all kinds of comedy. Comedy people would be like, oh, I can't believe you like that comedian. Yeah, I do. But I'm not sure where this doesn't descend into hate speech. There's a comedian who can be like, imagine if I said something like this, and it's couched in that. And then there's the, I'm kidding, I'm obviously kidding. There's none of that. It's direct head-on racism and pulling out the worst of the audience. From my perspective, it's garbage. The Washington Post profiled Ben Palmer. I told you about him maybe a couple months ago. He set up a fake tip line that people could use to report anyone that they thought was an undocumented immigrant. WashPost says one tip came from a teacher reporting the parents of a kindergarten student at the school. According to the Post, the woman told Palmer on a call, I mean, they seem like nice people or whatever, but if they're taking up resources from our country, I'm not into illegal people being here. So that apparently is why the woman thought it'd be a good idea to call a hotline to report on the parents of a kindergarten student at her school. Will Johnson, described by the Post as a pro-Trump podcaster and content creator, said Palmer is leading people on who think they're reporting a crime and suggested that perhaps, possibly, maybe, who knows, Palmer could go to prison for impersonating law enforcement. Johnson said in an interview, he's making people who are reporting people taking advantage of the system look like just bad human beings. The Post adds, neither Palmer nor the website say they represent a government agency. The site's privacy policies include disclaimers at the bottom saying they're intended only for parody joke purposes and sociological research. In one call posted online, Palmer told a tipster that he is affiliated, quote, in a non-affiliated way with the government, and that he works, quote, coherently and cohesively with the ISIS, unquote. Some of the examples on the hotline, one woman reported the new girlfriend of her ex-husband. Another homeowner reported a neighbor. The neighbor had used the first person's trash can. One person was at a Publix and said the worker who helped her find water didn't speak English. Palmer asked on the call, and then did she help you find the water? And the woman responded, right. She walked me right to it. Palmer said, if these are the calls I'm getting as a fake, not legitimate person, imagine what's happening at the actual ICE. As for the kindergarten call, the teacher, I didn't realize it was a teacher. Wow, a teacher decided to report the students' parents after looking them up in the school files and seeing they were born in Honduras and El Salvador. According to the Washington Post recap, the teacher said the student was born in New York and was 5 or 6 years old, but the teacher didn't like people taking up resources from our country. Palmer read back her report in a flat tone. The teacher apparently said, according to this recap, you make it sound terrible. Later in the call, says WashPro, the woman asked to speak to Palmer's supervisor and said, I can't help that they have a 6-year-old. That's on them. Tomorrow is the State of the Union, and the State of the Union is strong. Deadline caught up with writers from The Daily Show last week, tonight, SNL, and others to solve the riddle, is Donald Trump actually funny? Zubin Parang writes for The Daily Show and said, Trump is very funny, both intentionally and unintentionally. I don't think you can deny that. The guy knows how to tell a joke. The guy knows how to be mean in a very funny way. Late Night with Seth Meyers writer Jenny Hagel said there's a difference between him being funny and him being good for comedy. That's the thing people ask me about a lot. They're always like, wow, your job has got to be pretty easy these days. Trump's great for comedy. And I think it's the opposite, because I think so much of comedy is heightening, and he's so extreme all the time. I don't know how you write about it, because it's already the version I'd make up as a joke. John Glazer was part of this. Glazer was a writer on They Call It Late Night with Jason Kelsey, one of the very, very famous late night shows. Glazer said, I don't think he's funny at all. I really don't. It's like watching some crappy hack clean that up a little, who thinks he's funny because there's so much confidence in that delivery. I just feel like that confidence is so unearned when it comes to him trying to be funny. That's the other thing that makes me so mad about it. It's a kind of comedy that I personally love. The overconfident, smug a-hole can be such a funny archetype. The 2026 State of the Union address is set to be given tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. And that is your comedy news for today. Back at noon Eastern with the results of Comedy Survivor. Back tomorrow with a normal episode. Hopefully it's fun stuff. See you then.